Good afternoon and welcome everybody. Those of you who are here for the first time and returning guests. It is good and timely for us at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia to co-host this event with Dr. Farouk and IRF and also Democracy Academy for Malaysia. I say this right off the bat because there have been attempts, including lifting information and photographs from my Facebook page and publishing them elsewhere, apparently to tell people and groups what has been public knowledge from the very beginning some years ago, that we work regularly with Dr. Farouk and IRF. Indeed, we work with all manner of people and organizations, as any university worth its salt would. So if that silly caper of publishing all that stuff by a purported academic, no less, was aimed at intimidating me and trying to make me and my university look bad, think again. Better still, go do some real academic research, publish in worthwhile publications, and get some legitimate funding based on your talent rather than your bull crap and kiss-ass mentality. A caveat before I start. Lest I be deliberately misunderstood and accused of silly things, the caveat is this. Mine is not a religious sermon. I'm not here to preach to either the converted, the unconverted, or the cannot be converted. Only you yourselves, using your heart and brain, can generally do that. My main intention today is to speak out against the likelihood in the future that we, in my case academics, will have to state such a caveat every time before we teach. It hasn't come to that yet, but what happened very recently with the book banning and detention of Mustafa Akyol is a clear indication that things don't look too good in this already not very good looking land of ours under this regime. My related intention is to speak out against us ever having to get permission or accreditation from some dubious body to speak and write, or perhaps worse, from some pathetic individual who believes that it is haram for Malaysian Muslims to play chess or snakes and ladders, or get our hair cut only by sanctioned barbers and hairdressers. Not if you haven't noticed that I personally have to worry about that. My overall aim is to urge, politely I hope, all of us here not to sit back and play dead and quietly allow some idiotic bureaucrat, religious or otherwise, to ban books and curb knowledge. There is already too much censorship of information, of ideas, of knowledge, all of which I would argue without any real academic or scholarly basis, all of which simply to allow those in power in different areas and capacities to maintain their fast loosening grip on all of us, all of which to enable them to restrict knowledge, perpetuate ignorance, and reinforce their power and control over society, our society. The theme of today's discussion, according to Dr. Farouk, is based on the excuse given by the authorities for banning a couple of IRF's books and translations, items 17, 19, and 20 on the list. The actual wording of the excuse goes something like this. Let me try and get that. Oh, no, mine is too short. Isi kandungan mempromosikan idea liberalisme. Yeah, thanks. Isi kandungan mempromosi, this is what they wrote. Yeah. Isi kandungan mempromosikan idea liberalisme. Fakta dikupas menggunakan logik akal. That's wrong, according to them. Mengandungi unsur-unsur penghinaan terhadap agama Islam dan jelas menyeleweng daripada ajaran Islam yang sebenar. The three IRF books on the list, for those of you who haven't seen the list, are 1. Islam Tanpa Keekstreman Berhujah untuk Kebebasan, which is an IRF translation of Mustafa Akyol's Islam Without Extremes, a Muslim Case for Liberty. And 2 and 3, Wacana Pemikiran Reformis, Jilid 1 dan 2. Other books in this list of 22 that are banned recently, that have been banned recently, include translations of the Quran, some having been sold freely for yonks, plus the soon-to-be classic Zunar's Sapu Man of Steel. The excuse given for this ban on Zunar's cartoons was quite hilarious for me, though probably sad and even distressing for those concerned about Malaysia's national security. The excuse memuatkan karikatur yang mungkin memudaratkan kepentingan negara. Kepentingan negara, the national interest, is a term that's been bandied about in Malaysia as in other countries as a catch-all phrase to excuse, not explain away, actions by the state or state actors. What is the national interest is, of course, often not explained. And it is time we started asking for explanations. Explanations about what is the national interest. In what way can cartoons, t-shirts, posters, and even balloons threaten national interests? Which leads me to the first of the 3 points, of just 3 points that I wish to make in this presentation. First, who defines the national interest? In relation to this, what is the national interest, and in what way do actions beyond foreign invasion and threats of and actual violence against the citizens of a country threaten the national interest? There is too much ambiguity at the moment, I believe, leaving definitions and interpretations very much up to the so-called authorities. This leads to haphazard decisions being made, some even ad hoc, and often not so much in the interest of the nation or even the ummah, dare I say, but in the interest of particular groups and individuals. It is time to cut through the numerous smokescreens put up by those with vested interests and hold them accountable for their words and deeds. The second point I wish to make, which is more of a question to everyone, and I hope the eminent speakers on this panel will expand on this, is this. Is faith without reason, I take that to mean blind faith, genuine faith. Without moving into the realm of philosophy, being the liberal that I am, I'm drawn to a statement made by a rock singer, Bruce Springsteen, an American to boot, when introducing the classic song War at one of his concerts. To paraphrase, he said, blind faith in your leaders will get you killed. And this was way before the emergence of Al-Qaeda and Daesh and the white supremacists in the United States. My belief as an academic is that faith goes hand in hand with reason. God gave us brains to enable us to reason. And surely then, reasoning strengthens faith rather than threaten it. Granted, there are different modes of reasoning, but isn't it better to discover these different modes and their strengths and weaknesses rather than to just repress everything? And this leads me to my final point, book banning and repression. Personally, I don't see any rationale worth defending as regards the banning of books. Often, the excuse is that it's about protecting society, like any form of censorship. And often it assumes a clueless, easily influenced society, typically the young, the uneducated, the orang kampung. Often enough, of course, there are assertions without any evidence being offered or prior studies done. Statements and directives are issued based on a condescending, we know better than you perspective. Banning books, any book, says that we are in an unfree society. We are in a society that's controlled when often there is no need for that control. Such controls essentially maintain and reinforce the power, political and increasingly in Malaysia religious, of dominant groups and institutions such as JAKIM. Book banning also sounds rather silly in the digitized world we currently live in. It doesn't really make sense, which is why, of course, the authorities wish to extend such banning and monitoring further to cover new and social media. But I believe, thankfully, the technology is moving too fast for old-fashioned controls to be sustained. But the avenue for expression must never be closed, and one of these avenues is via books. Book bans hence affect society overall. All things being equal, book and other bans tend to close minds when really what's needed is to open minds. Such bans on knowledge really represent the antithesis of educating. The role of the Malaysian public, and of course academics like us, must be to seek knowledge, to open minds, to counter all these fascist tendencies, including the banning of books and other media, to encourage members of society to speak out against such controls. Often, works of art comment on social situations that already exist and possibly project a society we can become. This often is what the authorities, especially in repressive authoritarian regimes like Malaysia, fear. In these circumstances, despite threats, despite apprehensions, we need to develop a culture of skepticism, a culture of speaking up and asking questions. The alternative has been practiced for too long and has led to the pathetic and dire situation we are in now. We let it happen, and clearly it is time to speak truth to power to push back. Thank you.